I think we all agree that it looks like someone. The harder you work, the luckier you get.
Happy Malaysia Day, everyone. We are here today again for our podcast, and we have a very interesting guest with us here today. So we thought for Malaysia Day, one of the things that we will do is to speak to a Malaysian success story. Right? So what we have done is we managed to get the CEO of ZUS Coffee over to come and chat to us about his story, how the company has done, and really gone all over Malaysia. So with me today is Venon. Right, so Venon Tian is the CEO of ZUS Coffee. And Venon, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy Malaysia Day to everyone as well.
Right.
Very happy to be here to be able to share more in terms of how we started as a Malaysian brand and what we aspire to be in the future.
Great.
Yeah.
You know, Venon, I actually took a trip down to the East Coast a few weeks ago. Wanted to go and, went for a beach vacation. Was really deep not in Kuantan town, but towards Cherating and all that.
Yeah.
And we found a row of shops and we saw, hey, ZUS Coffee. My daughters were with me and they say, hey, ZUS Coffee is here too.
Okay.
And so you guys are all over Malaysia now, right?
Yes.
Right. And so really, I think it'll be hard for any Malaysian to say that they don't know ZUS Coffee. It's all over everywhere.
Yes. We've got close to 600 stores.
All right.
In fact, end of the month, we should be hitting about 600. Or maybe next month. By end of the year, we should have about 700. Yeah. So we ended last year with 360, ending this year with 700 stores.
Wow, that's almost a doubling of your outlets over 1 year. Fantastic. Okay, so now tell us, right? So for everybody who's listening, tell everybody who's listening, how did this idea for ZUS Coffee come about? What is the inspiration?
Yeah. So the founder himself exited his previous business. So he actually founded Hermo. I think most Malaysians would know Hermo as well. It's the #1 beauty e-commerce platform. And after he exited the business, then it was sort of like soul searching, looking for what should he be doing next, right? So then he went to China and found a very interesting model, which is what we're doing right now. And we pretty much got inspired by how China operates, how China works. Everything is digital first, cashless is there. Everything, you just place order through the app, right? So that's how the whole idea came about. Came back, spoke to some friends, and everyone bought in, and that was the gist of how it all started. Yeah, but I think that said, I think the early days was quite challenging because people just didn't believe in the business and people were just questioning in terms of why should I order coffee online, right? But that's how it started.
Yeah. I must tell you that you're not the first coffee brand, right?
Yep.
A lot of people have tried. In fact, fun fact, Sam and I also at that time invested in somebody who wanted to start a coffee chain, right? Long story short, the investment is gone, right? So it's not easy, right? So everybody has an idea, hey, coffee is big, and they would have seen what happened in China and all that. But how did you avoid failing and turn your brand into a successful brand? What did you prioritize? What goals were prioritized in the early days?
I think we were very, very disciplined in terms of store unit economics. Yeah, of course. For whatever that we have in terms of app, we acquire customers, online and whatnot, giving out free coffee. Ultimately, it all boils down to store unit economics. Whether if the store is making money, right? If it doesn't make money, then it doesn't make sense. Yeah, so we started off the first store operating out from a kiosk, which is in Binjai 8. It was about 200 over square feet. And the biggest challenge during the time was to acquire customers. Yeah. Of course, the very, very first strategy that we did was to give out free 3,000 cups of coffee. We took about 2 weeks to fulfill them. Yeah. And then eventually was just doing a lot of promos, campaigns and whatnot to attract people. Yeah. Then we had the second store, which is in Asia, in a shopping mall. And again, during that time was just to try out the model to see whether if the store unit economics actually makes sense. We saw a bit of traction, but still it wasn't that promising. Yeah. But again, how did we become who we are today? It still boils down to discipline. I mean, fast forward close to 5 years later, this is the principle that we've been following. Yeah.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, right? So like say the first 10 outlets, right? Were they all immediately, their units? I mean, the each store, was it profitable quite quickly, or did you have like in the first 10, 20 units, you have like some that you probably said that this place is not going to make it and we have to close or something like that?
Yeah. So what happened was that, of course, I mentioned a bit about in terms of challenge of online and all, right? But unfortunately, there was COVID, but the fortunate part for our business was that everyone went online overnight. Yeah. With COVID, people were buying toilet paper, were ordering your fruits online and whatnot, right? And I think there was an uptick in terms of all the food delivery platforms as well. And it was the same case for us. Yeah. So I think that we were very, very lucky where we didn't have to spend as much to acquire customers. And it all of a sudden makes sense. Yeah, it all of a sudden makes sense. Yeah, because we were already digital ready from day one. Yeah, a lot of F&Bs were scrambling to go online, but we were already there and people recognize us for that, right? So we continue to open stores over the next couple of months. And I would say that we actually turned profitable in 10 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we turned profitable in 10 months and we've been profitable since then.
Great, man. Okay, so I think if I bring you here and I don't ask this question, it's not going to, a lot of people can say, hey, why did I ask this question? So a lot of people have been speculating, what is ZUS? Like the brand, right? So is it a Greek god, Zeus, or what is it? So can you clarify to us today, what is ZUS?
Yeah. So ZUS actually stands for zealous for us. Internally, we call it zeal and us. Yeah. I think when we first started at time, right, the brand all started very simple. Yeah. We just, of course, there was a female brand in the market. There was a brand that's in green. There are brands in red. They have all sorts of colors, right? Except blue. Of course, we know another player who was blue during then, but wasn't like well recognized or giant per se. So then we're like, oh, blue is the color that we want. And we wanted the opposite of the female because we thought people would talk about it, right? Yeah, and that's how it all started. We passed it on to a brand studio, came out, we saw it, we're like, oh, we like this. What should we name it? I think we all agree that it looks like someone. Yeah, we took that name, but we removed an alphabet because we knew that we didn't want to be related to it. Yeah, I mean, we're Malaysians, we live in the country, we know the sensitivity of things, right? And we knew that we didn't want to be related to it. So we named it ZUS Coffee. Yeah. Did we know what the branding was all about? No, I can honestly say that we didn't know that from day one. Because again, when you start a business, you don't even know whether if the business will work, right? Why would you go all the way to the extent of thinking what's the meaning behind the brand? What's the brand profile? What is the whole branding like, right? So currently we do have like a brand story. We do have that whole deck that explains who we are. Yeah, and that's something that we've built along the way. Similarly, I think if you reflect back in terms of business itself, there was a lot of things that we didn't think about it in the very, very early stages. It was along the way that we learned, then we have to build it. Yeah. And if we don't build all of this, I mean, we had to put it in documentations, right? Even SOPs, processes and all. So we built it along the way.
Sure. I think I would be surprised if it wasn't that way, right?
Yeah.
Any startup that starts, nobody has like, hey, here's our brand deck and guidelines, color, fonts and all that.
I mean, speaking about that, right? If you think back, Grab wasn't Grab in the early days, right?
Yes.
It was called My Taxi.
Yes.
Yeah, and then they had to rebrand it. And I mean, along the way, when the brand is so big that they prove that there's something that done right, there's traction, then you move towards the whole branding, and the brand equity actually makes sense. But in the early days, it doesn't matter, right? Whatever that you call yourself, if you don't make money.
Sure.
Yeah.
Correct. That's true. But I still like the fact that even when you guys started, you still had some clear ideas to how to differentiate yourself in the market, right?
Yep.
So you have going against the male, female, the color. Anyway, the color has turned out really well because it's quite visible and
it's
away from all
striking
the
and
other
all.
brands, striking. So well done on that. All right. So, but I think a successful company is not built on a few people, or founders and all that. So how did you all really go about training staff, right, to align with that, with your vision, your growth, and making sure that every store, everybody there are pulling on the same direction?
Okay, I think in terms of direction-wise, I will address that separately.
Okay.
But just to take 2 steps back, right, the business itself has 8 co-founders. We do have quite a fair bit of angel investors or early stage investors. And the early days was pretty much one person doing 10 things. Yeah. And the very, very fortunate part with us is that everyone brings different skill sets to the table. Yeah. Ian, he's very good in terms of marketing. He's very good in terms of branding. Yeah. He knows what he wants when it comes to products, right? I'm pretty much the operations guy. So from really retail operations to the entire organization operations itself. Then we've got someone who is now our BD director, and he used to oversee our numbers. He's our finance guy. Yeah. We've got Terence, who's our head of barista, and he's still our head of barista. Prior to this, he was doing a lot of R&Ds and whatnot. And the other co-founders as well. Yep. So everyone brings different skill sets to the table, and we were able to grow during that time. But the next phase of things was that we found not everyone is built to manage the business. Yeah. So what we did was we corporatized the business itself, and not all the co-founders were actually senior management. Yep. And we wanted to let everyone have a comfortable position, some are specialists, what we call them specialists, some we call them managers, right? People managers, right? So we put different people in different positions. Then we hired a lot of professionals. And now I would say that ZUS is very much like a corporate on its own, less of a startup where co-founders manage it. In fact, today we just, we've set up like a committee to ultimately take over what Ian and myself is actually doing. Yeah, because then only the business can scale. Yeah. In terms of how do we train people to work for us, that's more on the retail side of things. We do have an academy, but prior to this, it was all trainings that were done by Terence himself, training that was done by myself. We have some operations guy who does all this training, but eventually we had to standardize a lot of policies, a lot of guidelines, training materials to train the operations guy to run things well. Yeah. In terms of alignment on what we want to achieve or where we want to go, right? I think that's very much the culture part of things that we discovered along the way. We went around to ask everyone last year, why do you join ZUS? Everyone came back with the answer that they like the fact that we're actually an underdog and we're taking on bigger giants. Yeah. Which is very much the same when we were growing as well. So we attracted some talents. Year on year, we had different targets for people that we want to hire, right? We want to hire guys from, the chain stores. We want to hire guys from the big fours. Then we hire guys from consulting firms. Yeah. And this, but the key again, right? As much as they are talented, the culture makes a lot of difference in terms of aligning people. So we use that fact and keep telling people that we are the underdogs and we want to challenge how things have been doing, and we want to optimize and be able to scale fast. I think we've done that in Malaysia. Then the next question is, how do we align everyone again to take on the next stage, right? It's actually the same. It's just different parts of the world. And that's how we've been doing it.
Okay, so ZUS is now going out of the country, yeah? Yep, great. Okay, so that's people, right? So I think the 2 elements, or rather 3 elements, right? So you've covered 2. Right? So good, successful company, good founders, and you have that. Then you build a good team, right?
Yes.
So these people and they all cooperate. The third is usually money, right? So you need funds, right? So when it comes to funds, right? So how did you all go about funding the company and also raising funds? and all that.
Yeah, actually, when it comes to money, right, versus people, early days we didn't really have the money to hire, but was very much selling the dream. Yeah, but along the way, of course, yes, in terms of money to grow the business itself, we're very fortunate because the network and the friends that we have all could afford to put in the initial funds that we needed, and we have been funding ourselves from the early days up till last year.
All right.
Yeah. We were also very fortunate along the way where banks were very friendly with us. Yep. So we took on some debt, and that is how we scaled up till, I think, 200 over stores. Yeah. And in 2023, we actually secured funding from a Filipino strategic. Yeah. Along the way, there were some PE firms who came to approach us. There were also some strategics as well. But we went along with the Filipino purely because we find that there is a lot of synergy and could actually bring us one step further in our overseas expansion. Yeah. So we have close to 60 stores in Philippines. And yeah, I mean, that it's like less than a year.
Wow. Okay, yeah. So basically, good to hear funds were available in the early days, but
Yep.
I think so. You're a bit of an outlier. You managed to get bank loans and all that. Right?
Yeah.
So most startups, they will suffer at bank loans, then they have to raise money, right?
Correct. I think ultimately it's making sure that the unit economics makes sense, you're profitable, or let's say you're not profitable per se, but your EBITDA has to be there, right? To be able to showcase to banks. We also had banks who came to us and say that we didn't believe in you guys. You guys are just another bubble, right? And you won't make it. Yeah, we got rejected before, but we had to go and sell that story to the bankers and say that, hey, you know, what we want to achieve, what's our vision, and they believe in us, and they're friendly to us to lend us money. Yeah.
Okay, so talking about marketing next, right? What kind of marketing, any particular campaign strategies that were, I'm sure a lot of people are looking out there and saying that, hey, how do I turn my own startup or story into a Malaysian success story, right? So what kind of advice would you give them, or maybe give some examples of your own marketing strategies that work?
Yeah. So like I mentioned in the early days, it was very much subsidizing orders. Yeah. So we gave out a lot of free coffee. We wanted people to try how good our product is. I think the fundamental has to be right? Which is you need to have a product that is good. Yeah. Then the next thing, so we gave out free coffees. We did a lot of promotions. So year on year, we have been decreasing in terms of our promo costs. Yeah. But the early days, we spent a lot of money just so that we can acquire them, we can educate them. That was the first phase of things. The second phase was very much introducing new products. Yeah. We used to launch one new product every 6 weeks. Yeah, because we think that that's a very good acquisition tool. Because, I mean, in the menu itself, you probably have 50 SKUs, but not all 50 SKUs fits someone's taste profile, right? So we roll out different kind of SKUs. That becomes our acquisition tool to acquire a lot of customers, and they stay eventually. I mean, coffee, you've got a journey. You probably start off with a flavored coffee, then eventually go to a staple, which is like your latte or Americano. And that's what we did. Now we focus a lot in terms of really building that brand equity. Yeah. So early days, we never used to do billboards. We never used to do all of those. Yeah, because we believe a lot in terms of performance marketing. We were spending a lot on that, very targeted. But now it's more on the brand equity part, which we sponsor the MFL, Malaysia Football League. We sponsor, we have some billboards around town. We're looking at a lot of sponsorships as well. And I think these are different phases along the way that we've been doing. Of course, along the way, there were also some controversies that you've probably seen us in the news. Some of them we kind of leverage on it to gain popularity. Some of them were accidental. That some netizens would say a lot of bad things about us, but in actual fact, it reflects well in terms of the business, because it's there's a saying, right? There's no bad publicity, right? There's no bad publicity. So sometimes we kind of ride on it. But again, is that the best advice for everyone? Not really, because we had sleepless nights during those times. Yeah. So don't follow those footsteps.
Of course.
Don't follow those footsteps. But
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that you can play around with, but the fundamental is still having a good product.
Yeah, I agree with you. So they do say that any news is good news, right? So even bad publicity bad news will also give you publicity.
Yeah.
But it's true, you don't want it, right? But if it happens, then you really have to see what you can do to turn it into positive. And I think it's good. It's good that I think customers were demanding certain quality from your products.
Yeah.
And then when they were not, then they raised that isolated instead. But it shows that they were expecting ZUS to be a high quality brand, which is good for you guys, right?
Yeah.
Because you could go to some other coffee store somewhere and say, I don't care if that it doesn't meet my quality, because that's that particular brand, right? So yours was, I think people are expecting that. Yeah. So that's good. And I think what the second strategies are useful for companies that are growing bigger. That's when you look at brand and sponsorship and all that. Now, but still going back again to what we just spoke about, customers and all that. What kind of how much do you really look out for when it comes for customers' feedback, right? So how do you get customers' feedback? How do you really look out for customers' feedback? And has there been any maybe particular example that you can quote of how, beyond those controversies, how customer feedbacks have influenced the way you all operate?
Yeah, okay. So for those who have actually used us or had any problems with us before, we actually do have a live chat function. Would admit that it's probably not the best experience because there's just influx of complaints or inquiries, right? We consolidate all these complaints. We split them into different categories of problems, and then we dissect them and fix problems from there. I think those were very, very good feedbacks, and I think complaints to us are very important. Yeah. So from very early days, we started to build what we call a customer happiness report, and the report itself tells us in terms of what customers are facing, day in, day out, and that helps us to improve over time, right? That was the key. Of course, there were a lot of feedbacks in terms of different kind of platforms that we were able to see as well, and we worked on those kind of problems. Yeah. Recently, I think we did some brand study, and I forgotten what's the term for it, but it's pretty much scanning in terms of how the entire sentiment and how what customers think about us, and we use those to improve. Yeah. Similarly, I think the biggest feedback that we've gotten this year is actually our straws.
Okay.
We are aware of it. And it's something that we are working on for the longest time. I mean, the rice straws that we have may not be the best when it comes to customer experience, but it's sustainable. Yeah, we have used that since 2021, and the cost of it is actually 5 times to 6 times more than the plastic straw. Yeah, but we still went ahead with it, right? This year itself, we're working on something that's sustainable at the same time that it's good for customer experience. But what I'm trying to say is that we do listen to our customers and we make improvements.
So do you have, out of curiosity, this mystery shopper kind of thing? Do you send people out to your stores to just order and to see how the, what kind of experience they get?
Yeah, so we do have a particular team called the Quality Assurance Team. What they do is that they go to stores to do QC checks. So there's like a whole checklist in terms of what are the things that we want to evaluate. And the thought process in the early days was very much assuming if, let's say, today I'm no longer in the store or managing the store operations, how do I ensure quality is being upheld, right? Yeah, so we had a team. These auditors will go to every single store based on the checklist to check to see how do they score. And we have implemented some incentives. If let's say you score well, we'll pay you better incentives. If you don't, then we'll forfeit your incentive, that kind of thing. And it has been working well for us, and we're going to continue to work on those kind of
Okay. So I think coming back to lessons and all that, right? So if you were to today advise someone about to start on the same startup journey, and we all have gone through our own startup journey stuff and all that, I'm sure there are lessons even at ZUS that you will say that, hey, this thing you shouldn't have done. Please don't follow me in that day and all that. So what kind of advice would you give to founders from both angles? One is, this is the advice I would give you if you're starting out on your journey, and then this would be maybe avoid this if you're starting out.
Yeah, I would say I'll comment on the part where you should avoid first. I mentioned earlier in terms of we always get into trouble in the news, right? And what we learn is that try not to comment. Yeah, people do forget about things. But we learned that the more we comment, the more angry we get, the more emotional we become, right? And so we tend to stay away from it. But we're aware in terms of the comments, feedbacks, and all. We evaluate to see what are things we need to improve, and we work on those. Yeah, rather than keep commenting on it, you get angry, and then and it's a customer-facing brand, right? Yeah, so it's not very nice sometimes when brand owners actually comment on certain kind of things. That's the one that people should avoid. And the advice that I can give most startup founders is that I know I'm in a pitchIN podcast. Don't focus too much in terms of fundraising. Yeah, I wouldn't say don't, but just don't spend too much time on that. Yeah, I think the time should still be spent on building the business first. Yeah, I had a chat with one of my friends the other day, and we find that there are a lot of events going on in KL. Yeah, of course, it's very good to network, right? But in and out, or I would always use this term, come, go. It's the same kind of events. It's the same kind of people that you meet. What value does everyone bring? Yeah. And I think it has gone that far to the extent where founders focus a lot in terms of the limelight rather than the business. Yeah. So I think the advice I can give founders is that focus more in terms of the business, right? Everything else will fall in place. Yeah. Like for our case itself, I think for us, I've been in startup for a while. I think, the perspective changed during COVID, maybe because we can't go out, right? So we spend a lot of time sitting in the office at home doing work, and we got nothing else to do. Yeah. So we spend 20 hours a day, 18 hours a day, just doing work, right? That made a difference. We didn't spend too much time. We were very, very focused. But if founders could also do the same in current times, I think that'd be great. I think a lot of times, like for now, right? A lot of my times is dealing with people, meeting different people as well, because the business has to expand and all, right? And I find that I do not have that much focus in the business, and sometimes I tend to lose touch, and not be able to fix certain things. And I keep having to remind myself that, hey, I need to jump back in, I need to fix this kind of stuff. I think that's very, very important. A lot of founders spend too much time fundraising that they've forgotten about the business.
Sure.
Yeah,
I actually agree with you, even though, as you say, we are from pitchIN, right?
Yeah.
So we are the fundraising company, and I totally agree with you. I can summarize what you just said right, into three things, right? One, don't be the lifestyle entrepreneur, going from event where I'm the startup founder, wearing those t-shirts. That alone is not going to grow your business.
Yes.
Two, focus on the business, and everything will fall into place. And third, don't focus too much on fundraising, because if your business is good, the funds will find you.
Exactly. Actually, I want to add on to this, right? Because while we were growing in end 2021, early 2022, there were a lot of people knocking on our door. And we were wondering why. Because we were building a good business, right? That people saw, people heard, and people came to us and said, hey, I want to speak to you, rather than you chasing. I mean, there's a term, I remember reading this motivational quote whereby don't chase but attract, right?
Yes.
That was what we were doing. And we have been doing that for, the longest time in business. I realized that focusing on business helped us when we need to raise funds. Yeah.
That's actually quite fantastic advice. Let me just ask you one last point now. We more was just what's your plans, right? So what's what's the future for ZUS? What kind of exciting things do you have in mind or developments and all that?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier in terms of number of store accounts that we have, we are of course the largest coffee chain in Malaysia as well. We do have a separate vertical, which we sell FMCG and also lifestyle. Yeah, ultimately what we want to do is to make ZUS everywhere in Malaysia, market itself, because it's our home ground, right? Malaysia, and very, very proud that we are able to showcase that a Malaysian brand is able to grow to this size. Yeah, of course, we've got Philippines as well. We are opening in Singapore in October. Very, very soon, we'll be opening in Brunei as well. As much as some people will think that Brunei is domestic, right? But it's still, having to move through the border. We are exploring a few more markets. Yeah, and it's very, very exciting for us. Besides that, we're also considering moving up the supply chain.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are the near, or we'll say short, medium term plans. Longer term, I don't know yet, because we're only 5 years old by end of the year. So we can only think 3 years ahead. 5 years is a long time. So yeah.
Great. I think this is a fantastic story. I must thank you for this, Venon, because
Kash.
it is a true Malaysian success story, right? And personally, I mean, I've known you for some years now, right?
Yes.
So we've seen the ups and downs.
Correct.
To see this succeed has been amazing. And I think this being Malaysia Day, really be apt that we interviewed the founders of one of the founders of ZUS, right? And I hope that the people who are listening can learn from this experience, and we see more Malaysian success stories. And before I close, I would ask Venon here whether there's any last words for anyone.
Not really. Not really. I think one quote that I always use, it's my mentor who actually gave it to me more than 10 years ago. I think you probably know my mentor as well. The one quote that I've always been using since then was that the harder you work, the luckier you get. And it's true. I mean, as much as a lot of founders don't want to believe in luck, right? Really, just work as hard as you can. Everything will fall into place. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much,
Thank you
Venon.
so much, Kash.
You've been listening to the pitchIN podcast. Thank you.